Welcome to the Digital Business Summit 2020. This session is focused on the digital workplace and also on the physical workplace, answering the question of, are you ready for the new normal? My name is Dee Anthony, and I'm a director with an ISG heading up North America's Collaboration and Experience Solution. We have a rather full agenda for this 15 minutes. We'll start by identifying 3 key questions you should be asking yourself. Next, we'll take a look at the now and then. Following this, we'll have a look at some interesting statistics. Then we'll talk about the A to the 4th, which means any place, any person, any time, any channel. We'll also introduce a new way of thinking about how your workers are working and where they're working. And lastly, we'll look at some getting started ideas. So sit back and enjoy the session. We'll start off by looking at those 3 key questions. The first question is, where are the key changes to your employee locations and their needs? Our second question, what are the location, process, and tooling requirements in the post-COVID world, and possibly for the re-COVID world? And how will these priorities inform your workplace strategy? You know, across the globe, many different localities, states, governments, and nations are changing the way that they're responding to the pandemic. Many of them are invoking new or existing lockdowns and procedures with new safety standards. This has created a change in where employees work and also when they work. Taking a look at the second question, what requirements do you have around the locations that people are in, the processes that they were doing before, and what tools have you actually introduced since the beginning of COVID? Some organizations have made major changes to the locations people work, the processes by which they serve customers, and the tooling requirements that they have associated with all of these. Different industries are affected in different ways, however, but in almost every case, the need to understand the safety and security requirements and the impact on the business process is important. But how have these priorities impacted your future workplace? Have you made changes to your expectations around the facilities, the efficiency of workers, changes to the security, changes to the working hours, changes to the number of working hours? Well, the list could go on, but before we do this, let's have a look at how it was and how it is in a very simple graphic. You know, as we look at slide 5, thinking back to the early part of the year, we were all big one happy family. We were all in the same room. We were working together. We were going to coffee shops. We went together. We interacted freely. Our lives now are filled with remoteness, looking at the screen all day with video conference after video conference after video conference in play. I know on average, just for myself, I have a number of meetings per day that is somewhere between 12 and 18. How many of you are experiencing the same type of thing? Where you originally might have had 1-hour meetings 5 times a day, now the meetings seem to be getting shorter and more intense and are likely back to back. There's no time to walk between office locations. There's no time to be both frustrated and informed on your daily commute. Today's model of work has changed dramatically. The tools and the technology needed to support this work are also changing. But before we get into a conversation about tooling, let's look at some interesting statistics and let's move forward. First off, turnover has reduced dramatically by over 25%. And what's more important to this conversation is the understanding that 70 to 75% of employees would rather remain working from home, but a large portion of these consider it a perk. There is an approximately 30% increase in productivity by working at home. The number of extra hours worked at home compared to the office worker is up by 5 per week. You know, that's obviously an average of 1 per day, but in my case, I might do all 5 of those on one day. Some of the benefits included on average, an average savings of about $37 per day per employee based upon the automation. And lastly, on the facility side, there's about a 50% reduction in the power cost to the office equipment versus home equipment. And so that's kind of interesting. But the end result is a requirement to have us the ability to work anywhere and to serve anywhere, which brings us to A to the fourth. The ability for any person at any place using any channel at any time to access needed tools, information, and transactions within and outside your organization has become the new normal. This would include a multi-channel access, enabling both your employees and your customers to consume services, whether they are internally focused or externally focused, creating a very personalized experience. In order to accomplish this, you have to have integrated platforms that provide real-time access and insights so that you can deliver this exceptional experience. Most importantly though, data is the most important piece, because without data, we don't get the insights. And the data has to be integrated across the front and the back office services. From an employee standpoint, collaborative tools and flexible spaces will boost productivity. However, work-life balance is most important in this time of change, and this will drive cultural change. So, one of the aspects is people are beginning to use more cognitive digital assistance and more automation to get things done. Lastly, these principles around an agile mentality will drive a new operating model, and you'll have to be nimble in order to keep up with the customer demand by reducing the time to market in this strange new world. So, let's rethink how the future deals with location flexibility. Our data has shown that the location from which people are working has changed dramatically over the last 8 months. This work translates into customer delivery, but in order to accomplish the task of delivery, and in order to accommodate the location changes, you really need to understand the top-down and bottom-up challenges for business, and the business model and value chain in terms of the process. Each link in the chain would be reviewed to determine how location plays a part in that particular portion of the business value chain. Many organizations are rethinking the way customers are serviced, looking at adjacent capabilities to make sure there is constant touch. That's around the A to 4 that we talked about. The office is no longer just a building. It's a series of places, whether it's a park, a bedroom, a kitchen, a corporate facility, a hotel room, or you're just plain in transit. What we used to think of as nice to have, this location flexibility piece, has now become a mandate. To further compound this, we have new worker types. People have other things to accomplish during the day, whether it is preparing dinner, educating the kids, or other non-working tasks. Each one of these do have an impact on the employee and their productivity. In just a moment, we'll talk about these new worker types and the many journeys that they will take during the day to get work done. And oh, by the way, it's not only during the day anymore, but it could be all night long. So let's have a look at these new worker types. If we look at the basic construct, we see prior to COVID and prior to the new normal, the background workers comprise the majority of the workforce. These are the people who work from offices or buildings or manufacturing plants or other locations that are corporately owned. As we move forward, we'll see an increase in the number of remote and hybrid workers. Hybrid workers are the kind that work both in the office and remote. We'll also see a reduction in the number of physical workers. This change has an impact on almost all portions of an organization, from HR to IT to security to facilities, and all the business lines that directly service customers. The impact will be great. But let's take a moment and focus on one or two aspects, namely safety and security. Take a look at both the physical and the virtual environment. Remote and hybrid workers are working virtual. Hybrid and physical workers are broken down into two categories that work at the corporate facilities and those that work everywhere else. This means that the office has to be everywhere. But in order to accomplish this, we have to ensure that the office of anywhere is ready. We spoke earlier about any place, anytime, anywhere, any channel. But really that's dependent upon some aspects. And those aspects are around AI monitoring, secure remote access, endpoint protection, data loss prevention, and a new thing called zero trust security. Maybe it's not so new, but it might be new to many. So, quick question. On the first day of telling everybody to stay at home and work, how many VPN systems were overloaded? Most of the organizations that we talked to were either preparing for or in the process of moving off VPNs, and they were digitally enabled. This was a good thing. How many people have endpoint protection on all work from home devices? How many of you have changes to their physical workspaces to accommodate social distancing, temperature monitoring, airflow monitoring, and other health standards such as spacing and room capacity? I would dare say that these are things that are on the minds of many people and on the plans of some others. Now, if we look at what's changing these capabilities, we need to understand that the access methods and why access is important to drive the solutions are required. Identifying the different archetypes to support the different types of access is most crucial. More importantly, consideration must be given so that these changes enable the business value chain rather than disrupt it or break it. And you need to determine how to address the needs of all worker types to ensure the right solutions are in play. Quick hint, most of the time, one solution will not fit all. At the end of the day, you may end up with what we refer to as the employee transit map. And because of this location flexibility, we need to understand the importance of having the ability to provide service to our employees, partners, and customers at any point in the transit. Now, as we look at the future of work and knowing how to support all key elements of all worker types, you get the idea of complexity. Take a look at the employee and customer transit map on the screen. You know, the days before COVID lockdowns, social distancing, and pandemics, now those seem simple. And while I'd love to go in and zoom in on this page and show you the track each one of these groups are taking, or each one of these worker types are taking, I don't think we have enough time in this session for today. But this employee and customer transit map demonstrates the need for planning and careful execution, knowing how employees and how customers are accessing systems, and from where and from when and via what channel is most important. So, how do you get started? First, get to know your worker types and their needs. We talked about hybrid and back office and physical and remote. You may have other worker types. Next, identify the hotspots for location flexibility and prioritize these hotspots. In other words, gain an understanding of where people are actually doing work and the prioritization of providing enhanced environments for those people to get the job done. Bring great minds together in ideation to solve for this location, process, and tooling requirement. Work through these requirements and establish improvement plans for each prioritized hotspot. And all throughout this process, plan for change. In the next session, we will have a panel of people that speak to some of these topics. So please formulate your questions and submit them through the channel. Get it? Have a wonderful day, and thank you for attending.